Hello, everybody, and welcome to this three-part mini-series, all centered around the three roundtable tracks at the upcoming edition of the Data and Analytics Insights Summit, which this time around will be taking place on our digital summit platform from December 2nd to the 4th. For each episode in this series, I'll be joined by one of our esteemed speakers, Bill Franks, who is the Chief Analytics Officer at the International Institute for Analytics. He will be with us sharing his perspective on the most pressing challenges facing data and analytic leaders right now and allowing us to benefit from his expertise. How are you, Bill?
I'm all right. How are you?
I'm well, thank you. I'm really excited to have you as part of the series. I know that today we'll be focusing on the first roundtable track all around enabling a data-driven culture and perfecting leadership. What is your experience in this sort of area of the data analytics space?
Well, I think one of the things is that today organizations obviously are being challenged with this whole global crisis, and you can go one of two ways when that happens. You can either double down on trying to really use data and analytics to make better decisions, or you can kind of run from it under the justification that there just isn't time and everything's new and everything's different. We've actually done some survey work around this very topic, and what we found, luckily, is that most organizations really appear to be sticking with the discipline of trying to be data-driven. That doesn't mean, of course, in this environment that in every case you'll have the right data or even necessarily the time to always get that data. I think that part of the key is that if you're going to be in a situation where you feel you have to just go with a gut decision, just make sure you're acknowledging that and you're kind of documenting, you know what, here are the reasons why we thought we just had to do this, and then maybe go back on the back end and when data is more available, you could validate both how that decision played out and whether or not you might have made that same decision had the data been available. So I think even in these scenarios, you can still really follow the proper procedures and protocols to be data driven.
Yeah, brilliant. And obviously amid the disruption of the last few months, both sort of tech spending that was rapidly growing before the COVID crisis and also company culture has been turned on its head. Where do you think the main opportunities lie here to advance that data-driven culture within your organization as a data and analytics leader?
Yeah, I think one thing is it's really important to sort of make it mandatory, right? It ought to be that when you're going to recommend a decision, you have to have some type of analysis and data to back up that decision, or as we talked about a minute ago, maybe a very specific justification as to why it's not. So that forces people, even if they're against the concept, it forces them to have to acknowledge that they're at least giving it some thought before maybe they dismiss it. I think the other thing is that when you start to really drive things with the data and the results of your analysis, there are occasions where, for example, my gut of what I thought the answer would be ends up being wrong. And if you have a culture where someone gets beat up for that, Bill, that was a really dumb idea you had and the data proves it, that's just going to make people more gun shy versus celebrating the fact this is why we do data-driven work. Bill, you had a great idea and your logic made perfect sense. But when we looked at the data, it showed it wasn't true. So thanks for bringing the idea. And this is exactly why we use the data-driven approach, is because of scenarios like this, where we can be confident we're making better decisions. So now I can go off and focus on the next one, but almost celebrating those cases where the data overrides what people were thinking rather than using it as a stick to make them feel bad. Because the reality is, no matter how good any of us are, there's going to be cases where we're wrong. And I'd rather be caught up front than caught after I make a potentially very expensive wrong decision.
Absolutely. And I think that gives some insight into the sort of state of C-suite attitudes towards, becoming truly data-driven in your decision-making. But what are the key things for leaders to consider when trying to change employee attitudes and behaviors around data? So what are the main pitfalls to avoid there?
Well, I think we covered a few of them, but the main one is, again, you focus employees on why they're doing it and why it's important. You enforce that they really need to be attempting to use the data analytics. And then, of course, the executives have to be practicing what they preach. If you go into a meeting and the VP is just spouting off an opinion, it's not going to obviously carry much credence downstream when that VP is yelling at you for spouting an opinion a few weeks later. So it's a little bit of a cliche, but that lead by example is really important in an area like this, particularly if your organization is less mature in this area. You could have a lot of people who've been around a long time who are not comfortable with it. and they need to see the behavior pattern repeated, both within their peer group, but also in their management chain, if they're going to reach out and try and embrace it as opposed to resist it.
Yeah, brilliant. Well, thanks so much, Bill, for your participation in this episode. Next episode, everyone, we will be discussing how to govern and manage increasingly accessible data. And Bill will be with us again to share his thoughts and his expertise on that topic.